This panel next up is the importance of sensory theatre audiences in mainstream programming. So thank you for being here. I'd love to introduce our panel to just start us off. So we have Amber, Onat, Gregory next to me here, who is co-artistic director along with Lucy that you met earlier of Frozen Light. We've got some great stats here that I'm going to read, if that's okay, who have created 9 sensory theatre productions, toured them to 70 plus different venues, and performed over 700 shows. So as a company, they work towards a world where people with PMLD can exercise their right to participate in cultural life. Yes, I feel like that deserves a clap. Beautiful. Amazing. And sitting next to her is Rachel Welsh, who is the chair of Interplay Theatre's board and has worked at a whole host of venues across the north, and now is the Director of Marketing and Communications at Royal Court, but has lots of diverse experience working in audience development and marketing at venues including Unity Theatre in Liverpool and Home in Manchester. Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel like we've got like a clappy audience this afternoon. It's good. It's good. And then you've met the lovely Natalie Kyrkos already, who is the Learning Disabilities Manager here at the Playhouse and has planned Beautiful Octopus Club that we've been part of all week as part of the festival. And she's told you a little bit about her practice as well. So welcome, Natalie. Thank you so much. Yeah. Do you want to audio describe yourselves? That would be amazing. Thank you.
Hello, I am a tall white woman with longish, blondish hair. I'm wearing all black except for a sequin jacket, and if I shimmy in the light, it kind of like glows around the room a little bit.
Thank you, Amber.
I am a short, blonde-ish woman with my hair tied back today. I am wearing mostly black with a lighter cardigan.
Thank you, Rachel.
Hello, I am a short, dark-haired woman, and I'm wearing blue jeans and a black jumper.
Thank you, Natalie. We will start off this conversation about the programming in sensory theatre just by talking a little bit about your experiences of it so far. So some of you have been part of programming teams that have got shows put on, and some of you have been part of making the shows that then get programmed. So just a little bit about you and your background in that. That would be great. Who wants to start? Oh, thanks, Natalie.
Hello.
Thank you.
Can we just go over the question again?
Yeah, so what is your experience of programming sensory theatre?
Well, it's an interesting question because I don't programme sensory theatre. My role really is to engage with the community, and that's sort of where my practice is, I suppose. I have worked as a support worker and a PA in services with individuals, and I've worked as a creative, as an artist, in many different settings, specifically with people with learning disabilities, but more specifically with people with multiple and profound learning disabilities, and or who exist in the world in a very sensory way. My drive for sort of creative input is because of spending time in the community that I feel the most at home in, and I feel that their input and their experience is so profoundly unique that I think it's exceptionally important for them to be welcomed into any environment, and for it to meet their needs, and especially as people that engage creatively in the world just in that nuanced way, to be able to work in a theatre and to make it an exceptionally and overwhelmingly inviting place, that you feel it in a sensory way, you understand it and know it from the voices, from the smells, from the sounds, it embodies welcome to you. You have to then programme sensory theatre. So that's sort of my role in how I would engage with it, in that I would advocate for the community, and that's how I see myself in that stepping stone.
Thank you, Natalie. We were actually talking just before the panel started about how brilliant the front of house team have been today, and everybody that's been welcoming us here. So thank you to you all. Yes, excellent. And we were talking about how that really embedding in the culture of a theatre is so important, and why roles like Natalie's are so important in a theatre space, to advocate for that audience and to bring everyone on the journey of welcoming people into these spaces. So like a huge advocate for programming this kind of work, and we couldn't do these kinds of shows without those advocates in our spaces. So yes, we appreciate you. Thank you. Do you want to talk about your experiences?
Yeah, sure. Hi, firstly, just so I can work out, I know we've lost some people over lunch, so it'd be good to know how much I'm preaching to the converted, because I've lost some kind of familiar faces. I would love to kind of have a show of hands for first. Can I have a show of hands if you consider yourself an artist or an artist who makes work in sensory theatre? Yeah, great. And can I have a show of hands for people who would consider themselves a programmer in a venue?
There's a few more hands. I see 4 or 5 hands.
Okay, fantastic. Great. It's really useful for me to kind of get that context. I think our experience is we've always been really lucky in the sense that we have always toured really extensively to theatre venues and art centres. When we started Frozen Light 11 years ago, we made the decision, as artists who actually came from a background of touring specialist schools and working in day centres, we made the decision not to continue work in that area, and we made the decision to solely focus on opening the doors of venues and individuals, local communities. And by having that focus, it's meant that we've been able to put all of our energy into doing that and to opening those doors, which has been really exciting to do. In our first tour 10 years ago, we were programmed by a touring network called House, which is based in the southeast of England. They toured us and subsidised our tour to 12 venues in the southeast of England. And I think it's useful to say that that's how it started, because that gave us, as our first ever tour, quite a significant tour as a company who'd never done anything. On top of that, we had got 6 venues from other parts of the country. So that made our first ever tour an 18 venue tour, which I just think that's a really hard tour to get for anyone to get. So that kind of really started our journey as an organisation that toured really significantly. Now, over time, our tours have grown and grown. So I think our next tour went to 25 venues. Our next tour went to 38 venues. And now we tour around 55 venues around the country. But which sounds like a lot, and people always say, oh, Frozen Light, you tour so much. And I know we'll get onto this in a bit, but I think I do just want to say at top, there are a lot of venues that we don't tour to, and a lot of parts of the country where we are unable to reach audiences. So as much as I want to say, yes, we tour really extensively, I don't want you to think we go everywhere, because that isn't the experience that our audiences have of being able to access theatre that is accessible for their needs.
Yeah, so my experience is kind of straddles a few different areas. So as Kirsty explained at the start, I've been predominantly venue-based, and that's kind of touring venues, receiving houses, but also produced venues from like studio to mid-scale. And my kind of specialism within it is audience development. And my relationship with programming sensory theatre has really been dependent on how much those venues kind of shoehorn sensory into an outreach team, or whether they see it as meaningful programming, by which that they want to cultivate that audience. It's not just one stop on a long tour that maybe comes every few years. So it's been how hands-on I've been able to be with that audience, and that cultivation has really depended on how the venue itself views it within their programme, whether they're just filling slots in the theatre, whether they see it as community engagement, or when it's done best, truthfully, the whole organisation is involved and it is meaningful programming. And again, that was why I remarked just before we started about being here at Leeds Playhouse and speaking to some of like the front of house team, how everybody is kind of embedded within that philosophy. I've had a few chats even in the lifts with people, and they know what the work is. And I think, for me, that is, I have been fortunate enough to work in venues where it has been done properly, and I have been able to be, from an audience's perspective, very able to cultivate them and take them on a journey. But, the sad truth of it is I have worked in venues as well whereby it's popped in for a day and it's left, and that audience hasn't really been catered to again. So it's a real kind of mixed range of experience, I think.
Yeah. Great, thank you. We really want to think a little bit today about the challenges of programming this work, because we really want to acknowledge that we understand that this work is specialist. We understand that this work is smaller scale than a lot of traditional theatre shows. Our audience numbers are smaller. And we just want to delve into a little bit about those challenges and how we might, as advocates for the work, think about overcoming those. Because we think it's important for venues and programmers and artists as well to hear a bit about that journey. So I'd love to open that out to you all. Like, what do you see some of the challenges being in programming this kind of work? What are the barriers maybe for theatres to be able to accept this work into their spaces? Go for it.
I think, it's fair to say from the start that we're kind of operating in a very risk-averse kind of industry at the moment. This doesn't need to be half an hour of me telling you about difficulties with funding at the moment within the arts, difficulties with retaining audiences in cost of living crisis, but they all do add up to create almost the perfect storm at the moment for venues in particular to be able to continue to operate and take risks. And that, poses a problem to shows that potentially have smaller audiences. That being said, though, there are also other avenues to explore around schools work and different budgets there, but that is a challenge in itself because schools also have the same funding issues that we do. So it is very difficult at the moment, and people, you can see it, and I imagine from your perspective, you mentioned like kind of effectively cold calling venues. You can really see it, and I know from even the wonderful team who've put together an amazing tour for My Life with a Wave. It's not been easy. It's really not been easy. And I think that is really the first big issue is it's not that people aren't interested in doing this work, they're just not willing to even engage with the conversation right now while they've got the budgets that they have, and it's a really difficult time, I think. So maybe, do you want to then speak a little bit about, from your side, speaking to the venues?
Yeah, so I think from my side, in terms of programming, I think the real challenges we have is finances, and I'll move on to finances in kind of a little bit, but it is just when the conversations can't start. So I think it's when you speak, when you cold call or when you cold email or when you meet someone at a conference, whatever it is, and when someone just hears, oh, it's a show for an audience of 6 and goes, oh no, and the line is the theatre programme has to make money, and that isn't one theatre saying that is across the board. So again, I'm not kind of pinpointing one specific organisation there. It is something that I hear time and time again, and I think I've had, to be completely open, I've had a really, really hard week of tour booking, so I am kind of looking at it with a very present context, but I don't think it is necessarily a now problem. It does feel particularly tough right now, but I don't want to just say theatre is in a mess now and it is bad. It has always been extremely difficult. It has been difficult for the whole 11 years that we've been tour booking, and that remains because of the gatekeepers of venues not opening their doors. And I think I just want to take a moment to kind of think about a little thought experiment where we look at 3 organisations such as Frozen Light, Oily Cart and Concrete Youth, and I choose those 3 organisations simply because we make work for audiences with similar needs and have shows for an audience of often 6 individuals with profound and multiple learning disabilities or complex needs, or whichever kind of like language you're using, and I'm going to take money and I'm going to put money to one side. So for a minute, I just want you to not think about money. And not thinking about money, we're sitting here in Leeds Playhouse and it has 3 theatre spaces. You could put Frozen Light in one, Concrete Youth in another, and you could put Oily Car in the other. And you could program us all for a week, yeah? I would say, and I hope Natalie would agree with me, is that with marketing, outreach, support, you could find audiences for all of those shows. Our shows are not similar. Frozen Light creates work specifically for adult audiences with profound and multiple learning disabilities. Neither Oily Cart and Concrete Youth are in the room, so I'm going to describe their work a little bit myself. But I'm going to say Concrete Youth's work is quite like multi-sensory musical theatre, and I'm going to say Oily Cart's is quite multi-sensory, experimental, live arty. So stylistically, they are very, very different pieces. I'd say our work is for adults and is also quite, it's quite like sensory extravaganza. It's big, it's really loud, which is again is stylistically quite different. And I would argue that audiences have the right to see all those 3 different kinds of art, or even 2 different types, because we're talking about 2 different age groups there, but yet we're here at this conference where we're all put under the same umbrella because the sector is so small and unsupported. And I think until we are able to start talking to venues as organisations about why we can't be programmed, it's going to be really, really difficult to shift. I'm going to bring money back in. So I put the money over there. I'm bringing the money back in. And what I would say is, as an organisation, we have 11 years of fundraising for making work for this audience. Our audiences haven't got smaller. They've been the same all along. We've got an incredible track record with fundraising. We raise money from trusts and foundations, project grants from the Arts Council. We are now a new NPO. We are looking into corporate sponsorship, individual giving. There is so much money out there, and funders absolutely love this work. I can't even tell you how much funders love this work. Once they fund it, they then want to fund it again, you know? So the income stream is there. What is not there for either venues nor theatre companies is the capacity, which I get. But I think as theatre companies and venues, we've got to work together on that funding. And if as a venue you feel that you don't have the capacity or the resources to come to a theatre company and see what help they might be able to give you as well. And we're also in the position where we're a charity, and we have a lot of artists coming to us who want to make sensory work, and they are not charities. And to encourage new artists to make this work, which audiences deserve to access, I also think venues are going to need to be able to support artists who aren't able to apply for trusts and foundations in the same way that we are. So we're in the really fortunate position that we're able to do that. What I would say is that the money is out there, the knowledge is out there, and we've got to work together to put those two things together.
Thank you so much. Really comprehensive. Excellent. I think jumping on your umbrella point as well about being umbrellaed together in this, I think there's real power in that today, in that we can chat to people that don't know about sensory theatre. We can open people's eyes to what different kind of work they can programme if this is new to you. And I think there's a real power in us advocating for each other and being those, sometimes it's not a lack of desire to programme something, it's maybe a misunderstanding of what it is, or not knowing that the audience is there, or not having the know-how of how to go about doing that. And I think events like this feel really important for us to be able to communicate what we do and for us to bring each other up in the industry, for sure. Natalie, do you have any thoughts on challenges of the work?
I think, yes. I think that my feeling on a lot of it is that it takes a lot of time. When you're working with a community that really communicate in such a diverse way around their choice. Now, especially at a time when we're talking about people having very little budget, actually struggling to stay in their homes, struggling to grow up, to be adults, to live in supported living, to have just that absolute nuances of life. When you're then working to support carers, parents, families in supporting choice, that really takes a long time to go, well, but I do want you to pay for a sensory show at the theatre. And being able to build a programme of work that really reflects and develops the idea that someone who doesn't communicate traditionally can make a choice, they can choose, and they are choosing this because they're choosing it by the fibre of their being. They're showing us through all these different opportunities that they're choosing. And their carers, their supporters in their life know that, and we are part of, and sensory theatre companies are part of that dialogue, that library of expertise and experience this person carries with them in life. But that takes a long time, and building up trust and being able to share information about individuals is fundamental for all of us to be able to make work happen, and make work happen to and for the right people. And ultimately being able to prove that to the theatre that you work within and or the theatre that you're approaching is fundamental, and being able to share that information with each other. So there's these elements within the process. It's sharing and being open and developing trust with your audience, but there's sharing and being able to trust each other in a professional realm to be able to deliver what you say. Because when those two things don't happen and they break, that's when we lose the audience, because they've fundamentally been let down so many times. To invest and to really truly invest, it's a big thing to ask. But actually, once they're invested, once they've been given and we have proven ourselves, I think the theatre, and I think what we are proving at the Playhouse now, is that if they trust us, they will come. They will come and they will fill the tent outside. They will come and we will go to them, and they will come to us. And that's why that's why we're here today, trying to discuss this, because actually if we all do better trust and we all do better sharing, those people that really want this and need this in their lives to really shine a light on the things that they love and the things that they should have had all along, somewhere to be and to be valued, like that they can have that.
I think it's so important to remember that our audiences have been let down time and time again, and I think it's important to remember that there's so many shows that exclude young people maybe without even considering that that's what they're doing, and I don't think that's out of badness. I think often it's about ignorance, and also sometimes it's about the challenges in the lives that people are leading, that it is there isn't work that is tailored to them very often, but that makes the rest of theatre exclusive, really.
And it's investment. I think that's the thing. It's long-term investment. This isn't something that's just going to happen like that because we've all had a chat about it and it's fine. It's not. That's not the case. But being able to go, we're going to do this step by step together, that proves, and also it becomes stable, because that's the other thing about the community that we're discussing. I feel that it is important to say that to be let down and to not have sustainable avenues is just really such a huge part of life. I went to this really nice project for 2 years and then it ran out of money and I haven't seen any of my friends again, but I can't tell anybody that. I know how to play the guitar, but no one realises because they haven't handed me a guitar. So it's all of those stories that people carry around with them, and being able to say, right, sustainably, we're going to do this together and we're going to build a programme that can be sustainable. That takes a long time, and really like a core value that is based in trust and sharing.
I just wanted to take that moment to kind of really acknowledge the work that you do as part of an outreach community department, whatever you call it, here at Leeds Playhouse, and the incredible individuals that work up and down the country in theatres who do so much outreach. I think one of my concerns that I've seen trying to tour book this work over the years is that often it is seen by programming departments the responsibility of outreach departments to do all of that work, and I think especially that has even increased with the Arts Council's new strategy, Let's Create, in the sense that Let's Create is costing venues quite a lot of money in outreach departments, and outreach departments' work is just going to constantly cost money. It's not going to bring any kind of income in, and that is then forcing programming departments to say, our entire theatre programme has got to make a profit, and that move is therefore excluding the individuals that the outreach team are working with. There is a huge issue where individuals which the outreach teams are reaching are just not being invited into the main programme, and this is something again that I don't see in one or two theatres. This is what I'm seeing in theatres across the whole country, up and down the country, wherever you go. And I think the danger is sometimes in those slightly larger MPOs. We tour venues of all different sizes, but the pattern I see is kind of those more mid to large scale MPOs, which I think have really high costs due to the venues and just to how much it costs to keep doors open. And they actually have quite a significant investment from the Arts Council, trusts and foundations for the outreach work. But then the programming the programming area is just seen as it has to make a profit. And I think we need to kind of be able to look at the structure of that to say, okay, is there nothing that can come from outreach into program, or nothing that can come from the profit of this into that, or again, maybe it is external funding from elsewhere, but the kind of binary, this money sits in outreach, this money sits in programming, is really, really problematic. And what I would love to see is the work that people like yourself are doing are then able to come into the main program.
And just on that, I think one of the things that I think has been very helpful in terms of us being able to move forward together, all of us being able to have a week like this, is exposure. So people with multiple profound learning disabilities, their supporters, their parents, their carers, often are closeted away in day services and or in homes that you don't see them. And you often sort of, it's so nice, you're such nice work. It's so nice. That's great. But actually, David's really important, and David doesn't want to be at home watching telly all the time, and or neither does his mum. So how about we offer free events? Now, we all have struggle with budget, but actually being able to offer a very clear, you can do it for such little, but I think it's much harder to say no to David and his mum if you've met David and his mum. So, and I think that's a really true point. People are people, and the nuances of communication are beautiful. And actually, if we can create within our venues more opportunity for people to come in and have a free coffee and explore your venue, it's amazing if you've got some funding to offer free sessions. But by being able to invite someone and say, I saw you at home, I'd love it if you could come and see me. That's a friendship. That's building a professional friendship which alludes to trust and care. And actually, I think it's much harder to continue to deny someone if you have put them in your space and people have seen them. They've met the front of house teams. They've met Terry on box office. They know people's voices, and people know them, and they want to see them in the building more. And I think that gears people to thinking about these things differently, because actually they're a paying customer. They bought a coffee in the coffee shop. And that's choice. It's developing choice. And actually, maybe they'll buy a ticket to a different show that's not a relaxed performance, just because they want to go with their son, but I don't have a learning disability and I'm their mum or I'm their carer, but it's safe that there I can bring them, we can go together and have an experience. That's a paying customer out of choice, which feeds into programming. And we're going to put on a sensory show, and it's going to be a small audience, and we may give some of those tickets away to groups that are coming in, but they're doing us a service, and actually they are spending money, and that is the ecosystem of it. And I think that's how we change it. It takes a long time, but I think there is something in that.
And what you say about the loyalty of audiences is definitely true of, I think, a lot of people's experience, is that there might be that free session or that free show that people come to at first, but you're building the development of an audience over a really long period of time. And the learning disabled audiences will come for life if you make it accessible and exciting for them. And I can attest to that in my own family, that you can't get my family away from the theatre now, but that's only because relaxed performance has existed. So,
but I think that is the big barrier now is beyond the money, is that we are working on such short-term timelines because we don't know when the next bit of money is coming. So it feels like the biggest victim of that is the audience, and being able to actually go on an audience journey. It feels like the audience, you need that immediate kind of almost gratification of them being there in that seat, that value that they bring to your bottom line budget. And what is being lost in this climate is actually seeing them as somebody who could be a longer term audience member. And I know from my kind of perspective working in audiences, marketing and communications, that's my concern really, is that, people are programming much later. There used to be a really clear cycle in theatre of when you should really begin to your approach. A lot of it was based around festival programming, which in itself has plenty of access issues, but you could kind of begin to understand the best points to make that contact, to justify, repeat attendance and repeat programming and forming those relationships. If people don't know now, from quarter to quarter, if they can afford to pay their overheads or even pay their staff, you aren't actually guaranteeing that second visit and that nurturing. And I think that is potentially the scariest part. We are very much at risk of an industry of only assigning value to an audience member in that one moment, which is that they gave us some money to hit our target for that show. And I think that's quite, on one hand, a very scary thing, but it is something that, with collaboration, I know this is the next question, I'm jumping ahead to the positive, it's something that can be overcome, because we're going to have to think differently as an industry. We are going to have to lean on other sectors. We cannot stay insular, and sensory theatre is way ahead of the curve on working cross-sector. I look at the partnerships that, Interplay have formed with universities, with science, with digital, with technologies, with the education sector. It's masses ahead. And that is going to be the key, I think, to forming longer term relationships, because otherwise at the moment, with the way that programming is happening in venues, we will maybe know what's going to happen for the next 6 months. And then that means that when these people come in and they have their first visit, they themselves don't have the assurance that they'll get a second. And that, isn't a great experience to give anybody.
No. And it is an issue that happens in traditional theatre too, for sure, but that it further marginalises the people that can't access it all of the time. The next...
I was going to say, and you know, the average UK theatre attendee does attend maximum 1.2 times a year, and that is usually their Christmas pantomime, which is seen as a more accessible form of art. Audiences that attend sensory and specialist theatre are on average at least double that. So that is a justification, again, to programmers to say, we are building you an audience that you will rely on, because your core audience, those that will come to your pantomime, that's the only one slot a year at the moment where you're getting regular attendees. So it's flipping the narrative for these programmers to see the benefits of longer term investment.
Great. I would love us to share now what we feel the benefits are for creating this audience. What are the moments of joy and the moments that we feel like make the work really worthwhile? What are the benefits of this audience? Go on, Natalie. Thank you.
It's everything. This is like, I think it's a story. It's the story, isn't it? I mean, one of our outreach groups has come in today to see My Life with the Wave. They walk into the building and they know the staff's names and they feel so at home. And sometimes say things like, I want to go back on the bus. Like, they've brought me here and I know where I am. I know where I am. I've made the decision. And I think that, to me, is that's it. And I think before that, sometimes the story that you hear is that they were at service, and that's effectively their sort of home from home. Taking groups into the theatre to see a show, the stories that come from them after are things from their childhood, things from remembering doing things with their mums, and I think all of that. And you can see the people that are with them, and I've done many projects specifically just with parents, carers, support workers. Going and doing it together and sharing in that moment is so special, and I think that's one of my favourite things about it, is watching that relationship, because sometimes when you are working in care, you're sort of it can be one of those places where you do it as a fleeting job, or you do it your whole life, but you feel sort of separated from other people. But when they've felt so invested in and coming in and watching a show that's either had specific adaptation for them, so for example a relaxed performance, or they're coming to a sensory show, they just say that they've had a really nice time together. And sometimes when you see somebody caring for someone and that they spend so much time together, but they're not talking to each other, or they're not talking the same language, be that a physical one or a verbal one. Having some time together to make something is just a huge shift in that you're compatible, and that it's not just me looking after you, it's us sharing time. And I think that's really one of the things that I think is the most important and special about it, because it really props up someone's life. It means that they will be able to carry on, and that they've been able to share experience, knowledge and understanding of something. And I think that's the best thing for me.
Thank you, Natalie. Have you got any moments of joy, Amber?
Yes, I kind of wanted to highlight everything that everyone said already today on the earlier panels. I think the earlier panels spoke so much about the beauty of creating the art of sensory theatre, the incredible one-to-one interaction and those moments between audiences. So I kind of want to take a moment just to acknowledge everything that the earlier panellists have said. And I think I feel like this isn't necessarily joy or not joy. I think I wanted to say something more about audience demand, which you touched upon earlier. The audience demand that we receive is absolutely fantastic. We do hire someone full-time to work with us as an audience development officer, which has been an essential role to our organisation, so we can support venues in finding their local audiences. And we work really closely with every venue that we tour to on getting that local audience. And what that relationship is, that then kind of follows through tour after tour, show after show. And we're really lucky as well within our team, we get significant evaluation from audiences where we're able to have kind of longer conversations with audiences post-show, and often like in Zoom conversations afterwards to say, you know, what was that experience for you? And our current show, The Bar at the Edge of Time, we set it in a cocktail bar, and there's also a gig that happens in it. So a lot of that was about giving the audience the opportunity to come to the theatre and a cocktail bar and a gig, and a lot of feedback from that for audiences have been, that was our first time in a cocktail bar, that was our first time going to the gig, that was our first time at a theatre. And that, you know, theatre can, again, this has been mentioned earlier, theatre can take you anywhere, and that's kind of why we're all here in it. But I think just, again, that audience demand of, it is like, I think it's, you know, I can't remember the exact stats, so forgive me, but it's something like 50% of our adult audiences have never been to the theatre before. But again, once they come, they will come time and time and again over the last 11 years. We've got individuals who have been following our work for 8 or 9 years now, which is just absolutely incredible to see. And again, when it kind of bringing it back to programming and audience demand, it's about, like, we don't want venues to just program our show. We want there to be more artists making work for this audience, B, being able to program them in theatres, which also feels impossible, and for C, the audience to then be able to come to see a whole range of different shows in theatre venues, and that audience demand is there for it. And I always feel like it's not enough to like start a petition, but we get so many emails from audiences in specific areas being like, why aren't you coming to Lancaster, you know? And again, there's not enough of it to be like, this is huge, we'll take it to the news. But it's enough kind of disappointment that we feel as an organisation that we are letting individuals that we are making work for down by not touring to certain areas of the country. And we have a responsibility to be able to do that. And we cannot do it alone, and again, we work in partnership with every venue we tour to do it together, and that is what I just really want to keep doing, and can only hope that it continues to grow and continues to work in partnership with venues to reach audiences across the country, so that we are able to keep giving people the opportunity to go to the theatre as is their human right.
Have I got any joy? I like that question. Yeah, I think one example I wanted to touch upon is also the legacy that programming sensory theatre leaves beyond the audience, and beyond, and actually what staff learn from working with companies like yourself, who are, when you arrive at these venues, you're not arriving just with a show for audiences to see, but also with a whole wealth of knowledge and training and expertise that is passed on to staff members, and the legacy that then leaves for other excluded audiences, whether that's the language that you use and not use an assumed language, and ensuring that your communication is of like the easiest possible way. Or, you know, Sarah's sat on the front row, so I'm going to point to her now with this example. Sarah's general manager of Interplay, and Sarah we were talking about booking the tour for My Life with a Wave, and Sarah put a lot of work and research into talking to the schools in the language they use on their website, because there is a whole spectrum of definitions around audiences with access needs. And so that is something that should be done as standard for everybody with barriers to the theatre. You should speak in a language they understand so that they feel welcome. And what those working in sensory theatre is doing, they're just doing it naturally. And the legacy that these companies are leaving is that you are teaching the marketing teams, you are teaching the front of house teams how best to welcome people in the most accessible, non-exclusive way. And for me, I've seen that happen in like multitude of venues that I've worked at. The venues just become a better place for having it in there, not just for the audiences that you're trying to attract, but for every audience member. And I think for me, that is the joy that I get from this, is the legacy that we'll leave, and how much it is changing the industry and these venues for good.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you so much. It's really insightful, and it's the idea of margins to centre, isn't it? Is if you make things accessible for the most marginalised, it benefits everybody in the rest of the sector. Thank you so much. I'd love to open up to anyone from the audience. If you have any questions for our panel at the moment, we'd love to hear from you. Anyone? It's a lot to take in. Rio, go for it.
I'm so sorry, it's more of a comment than a question. Absolutely hideous. I was just reflecting on, we've heard so much about voice today in our audiences, And I suppose with a programming hat on, I just wanted to acknowledge that programming is also about choice, and it is absolutely true that we have very little resource as venues, but where we put it is a choice, and reminding ourselves that assumptions aren't inevitables is really helpful. Like, if you can't afford a layer of access, you can take it out of the design budget, and that is a choice you can make. And I think, like, going on very much my own journey with this, which is so not there, one of the amazing things has been how helpful the companies have been. And when we kind of come up on those challenges and I'm like, I genuinely don't have any money, let's look at my budget together. And I think that we're all on the same team, and just holding that, I think sometimes as a venue you feel like you want to make everything right, and you want to kind of give everything really boxed off and neat to a company, but actually that isn't helpful a lot of the time. And I think, these companies that are going to sit down with our development team and talk about things is so helpful, and it's so great to do that in a collaborative way. I suppose what I'm saying in a rambling way is that it feels a lot more possible than I thought it was, and that's really joyful, and I offer that as encouragement, I think, and gratitude for everyone sharing that expertise.
Thank you, Rio. That's great. That's lovely. Great.
So just to point to that, and that shows when you open the door and have the conversations what can happen, and have the conversation. Actually, it might be your choice. It's not right for us, and then.
And then Amber might not leave you alone, but.
But then we can go. Okay, we've had that conversation, and you
might go. I'd actually rather program Interplay, and you can come next or whatever. But the conversation's been had. I think, yeah.
It would be great to get to a point, wouldn't it, where venues and programmers can go, oh, we don't fancy the show in a cocktail bar, actually. That doesn't feel right, but we could program this show for the audience that we're serving instead. It would be amazing to get to that point, I think.
I think as well for talking about when you're having something that's accessible and talking about choice is that
if you take it to things that are maybe more mainstreamly available, like sort of relaxed performances at the cinema or something, they're always at 10 in the morning, and the people that I support are still in bed at 10 in the morning. It's kind of being flexible about that idea that not everybody is kind of, that might be the quiet time when it's convenient for you to sort of allow this group of people to come in. And also about the visibility of kind of being accepted by people. Wonderful that if the members of staff in a venue are welcoming and supportive, and that's got to add on to then that the general community are accepting of that as well. Again, I've been in a cinema for a Billy Elliot screening, for example, for a musical, and have been asked by somebody, that the person that I'm supporting during the adverts, if they're going to be quieter once the film starts, because the tolerance level of people going to the theatre or whatever is so low that the only way to get past that is to be welcomed by the community, be welcomed by the staff that are there. And even though we were supported by the staff in that instance, it was made so uncomfortable that we did have to leave, because that was the only, choice for us. But we really need to sort of wake people up about that idea that theatre isn't and shouldn't be for one very elite group of people, and that we should sit silently and just pay attention, because those people are missing out on a wealth of experience as well. So, yeah.
There's so much work around that, isn't there, around managing expectations of everyone. It's a power of work to be done. Corin, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
It's a very similar point to that, but obviously probably not a correct term, but I'm talking about myself, so it's fine. I feel like I'm becoming more autistic as I get older, and theatre is becoming more difficult. So just last week I was in London and I was wearing my ear defenders for the first time in a theatre that I never would, and more relaxed performances would be really helpful, and not having them at 11 a.m. in the morning because I am in bed, because I am a chronic insomniac, and that's the time that I make up for my sleep. So programming more things that are relaxed would would be a joy to me, and I already come a lot, but I would come even more. So the only day that I could see Oliver was on a relaxed performance day, but it was at 11 a.m. and I was like, nah.
Can I jump on? And I think that's a really good point, and we should have relaxed performances at lots of different times. The reason the relaxed performance, this one and the last one was, and specifically this one was programmed at 11, is we have a group of people with learning disabilities from different groups, from different services across the city. They're a very broad range of persons. So some of the group live independently, travel independently, have an independent life. Others of that group attend with more than one support worker, need support with every element of their lives, and are much more a sensory person in the world. So we have 2 auditing groups, and then we have a number of individuals that might come and see the show that we get tickets for, and they're part of this auditing network. They come in and they see the show without adaptation, and then they feed back to us to see what adaptation we should then make on the show. The time was set at 11 because the majority of that group felt that it needed to be at 11 o'clock because of to do with their support needs around that, and the day of the week that it was on, because it was on a Wednesday, and they felt that they would need that time, and they'd be up and busy and doing all those things. So we set it at 11 for that reason. Traditionally, relaxed performances were always at 12:30. They were at matinee time, and that was considered right. But actually, if you're in a day service or you're at school, you're not going to be able to see a whole show. So we set it at 11 so people can get all the way through it and see the whole show. What are we talking about here? People aren't going to see a whole show. That's mad. So, but I take your point. But I think really what has to happen is that we need more than one relaxed performance in the run of a show.
We need 10.
And more than one relaxed performance a year. Sorry, everybody.
And one on Christmas, and one on Christmas Eve, please. It's always in January.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's more relaxed performances on different shows, and then we wouldn't be being held to. We would be catering for people properly. But just so we know, we did ask people how the time of the thing was set.
I feel like I'm front of house in a different theatre, and for me as an autistic person, working the relaxed performances is the most rewarding night of the year, and the fact that it's only one day is just heartbreaking. But rewarding that we can do it, but I wish we could do it more.
I just want to take this opportunity to bring the money back here, and just a short, because I know that we have chats like that, like let's do more relaxed performances, let's have more accessible shows, let's have more accessible, let's have more shows for an audience of 6, and someone's there like kind of squinting, being like, no, like what, the money. So I just want to bring the money back into the room and say there is money for this work. We need capacity to get it, but the finances are there. We live in a world where we've spoken so much again about there's so many individuals without any money. There's also a lot of people in this world with a hell of a lot of money. So, it is absolutely our right as theatre makers to try and go and get it. And we've got to all club to get together in capacity and to stop using money as the reason why we can't do things, and go out there en masse and find the cash.
Let's do it now. Jenny, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wondered if we could really define this. So just have an uptight performance.
Once a year. Yeah.
And then all the others are for
Yes, please.
everybody else.
I love that. Let's start that.
And oh,
Hello.
For our Zoom people, could you just very quickly reintroduce our panel and what they do, just so they can hear that again?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone. Oh, absolutely, yeah. So on our panel we have Amber, Onat, Gregory, who is one of the co-directors of Frozen Light. They create sensory theatre productions that tour around the UK. They've been to over 70 plus venues across the UK. Next to her, we've got Rachel Welsh, who's the chair of Interplay Theatre, who's worked at a whole load of venues and specialising in marketing and in audience development. We then have Natalie Kyrkos, who's the Learning Disabilities Manager here at Leeds Playhouse. Is that okay? Great, thank you so much. On that note, I think we do have to end this panel. We've gone over a little bit, but the conversation was so good, I didn't want to stop it. So thank you so much. Can we give this panel a lovely round of applause? And thank you for your brilliant questions as well. We're going to take 5 minutes there just to have a quick break and leave a space if you would like to. And then we're having a more focused question and answer session back in this space. At 2:30, Natalie will have a sensory session outside. If you want to sign up for that, you still can. There's still time to do that. But our Q&A will be happening in here. So we look forward to seeing you back then. Thank you.